If you're looking to become a psychologist, then let this be your guide. With this podcast at your side, you'll be on your way to being qualified. It's the Aspiring Psychologist Podcast with Dr Marianne and Trent.
Hi, welcome along to the Aspiring Psychologist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I am often asked in my day-to-day goings about supporting aspiring psychologists whether it's always necessary to have a master's in order to pursue and progress your career as an aspiring psychologist. And today is my attempt to help to answer one side of that debate, really. I am going to be joined in conversation, which you can watch if you'd like to, on the Good Thinking Psychological Services YouTube channel. But you don't have to. You can just listen through this very podcast that you might be listening to right now. I'm going to be joined by a lady who works for a master's course. And now I should say that I haven't been funded or, cajoled in any way to record this episode. I reached out to the course because it was a course that I had studied and that I had found really useful. Just take on board what we discuss. We're discussing the benefits mainly of doing a master's. But if you would like to talk to the other side of this argument, that maybe you think you don't need a master's to progress your career in psychology, then do please drop into my DMs or send me an email, and we can absolutely discuss getting you on to talk to the other side of this debate. And similarly, if you found it useful thinking from the perspective of a mother in last week's episode about whether you can, should, and what it would be like to train as a professional psychologist when you're a mother. If you'd like to discuss it from a male perspective, do let me know as well. And I hope you'll find this episode really useful, and it might open your eyes to thinking about different ways of strengthening your CV. And I will look forward to catching up with you at the end of this episode. Yes, I hope you find it useful and speak to you very soon. Welcome along to Dr Mel West, who joins us from Newman. Hi, Mel.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. I reached out to your predecessor, who was Lorna, because I had done the master's qualification with Newman. And so when I was wanting to talk about masters, sometimes it's better the devil you know. But I understand that you took over after Lorna, is that right?
That's right, yes. So I took over from running the masters in 2017. It was a big thing because Lorna set the course up and she'd been running it for a long time. And so there's some big shoes to fill, but I think I'm doing all right, yeah.
Very hard to give away your babies, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's the thing as well. Yes, I think she was quite watchful over it for a while, but I think I've sort of earned the trust now. And yes, she obviously an absolute fountain of knowledge with so much to give, having set it up, as a novel course, and having set that up and being part of the initial thought about developing it, she's given me so much information that it's enabled me to go into it feeling quite confident and running it successfully. Yeah.
Brilliant. We will hear a little bit about the novel way that your particular course is set up a little bit later, but our audience is not just clinical psychologists like me. Our audience can be anyone really who is an aspiring psychologist or working in various different areas of psychology. Could you tell us a little bit about your kind of psychology career and how you got to be where you are now, please, Mel?
Certainly, yeah. So I finished my undergraduate degree, and I actually didn't go straight into a master's. I decided that I'd had enough of education, higher education, and I needed a break, and I went into finance because obviously psychology allows that with all the stats. And I have many years of working in finance and got married and had children. And then we moved to a different part of the country. I'd always felt I wanted to go back to it. I wasn't finished with psychology. But obviously, once you get caught up in life, it can be difficult. But having moved to a different part of the country, I'd sort of given up my job and I felt free to try something new. So I went back to university, and I actually, because I had done back in those days psychology with health studies, there wasn't health psychology back then. I had to do a PG certificate to get the conversion for the BPS graduate registration. So I did that, and then I went on and did my master's in health psychology, and then did my PhD. From that point, I've been working in higher education at different universities.
Thank you so much. Thank you for chatting to me. We were chatting just before we went live about actually quite how unique the qualification certainly was when I was looking for it in 2006, 2007, because when I was doing it, it was part-time, distance learning in the main, but I had to kind of go a little bit in once a term for teaching and for an exam. But I understand it's moved and become even more modern.
It has, that's right, yes. We are now completely online, apart from one day. You come in for the induction day, and that's where we talk you through, make sure you can use the library systems, make sure you can use Moodle, and so you can navigate your way around the sort of electronic sort of versions of everything. And also that just enables you to meet your cohort in person and the staff. And then it's all online. There are no exams. It's just coursework. And like I said, we are doing recorded lectures so that they're available. And then we have the chat functions where we discuss the reading. And there are sort of online activities and quizzes and things. So it's amazing how everything is done electronically.
Yeah, and I guess the pandemic has sped up that process as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously we were moving towards that sort of gradually, the world generally. But yes, as the course was already mostly online at that point, it was it was still quite novel in that respect at that time, and COVID's pushed it forward. And I said, so now we are making it even more online and even more interactive online. That's the difference, I'd say. That's the thing. Before it was less, it was more asynchronous, and now it's becoming more synchronous because we're much more au fait, if you like, with doing these face-to-face sort of digital electronic kind of contacts, which is great because we then are getting to see the students rather than see a picture of the students all the time.
You guys were like 13, 14 years ahead of the the remote working curve. You're really doing good stuff. A really common question I'm asked all the time, really, which is, do I need a master's, to progress my career in psychology, either Clin Psych or health or forensic? Do I need that, or can I do that without? And I guess that's an important kind of one for us to weigh up together.
Yes, definitely. It is very important. I think that some people can be lucky and you could get away without having a master's, and I think, like we've said, we mentioned briefly before we came on air, that maybe you could, there was this belief that if you had a first you could get away without doing a master's, but actually I think they're so competitive. The field of psychology is so competitive that actually, even if you have a first, a master's is a real benefit, because it is a step up from an undergrad. Even if you have got a first, it is a higher level. We talk about them in universities. We talk about it. Your first year is year 4, and then second year is level 5. Third year's level 6, and then your master's is level 7, and that is a step up. When you look at all the marking criteria, there's a little bit more expected. So and I think that's, maybe employers are aware of that, and certainly within psychology there's an awareness of that. So I think you don't always need a master's. You could be lucky, but it's mostly advantageous.
Yeah, I guess what I liked about what I did, and I'd said before we came on as well, people would be like, I'd rather listen to what you were speaking about before. It sounds good. But before we came on, I only did, I think, the postgraduate certificate, because I managed to get on the doctorate after 1 year. And that was still really advantageous, actually. So I was really pleased that I was still able to get a qualification for that 1 year. But even just the rigorous way that you taught me about research and being able to comfortably take that apart, pick it apart, put it back together and construct my own was really useful.
Yes, that's right. So it's the case that it is, we often have students starting, they have to register for the masters anyway. That's the way it kind of works at the moment. But they sort of leave after doing the first year, which is 3 taught modules, and that gives you a postgraduate certificate, or you can stay on and you might finish the 6 taught modules, which is the postgraduate diploma. And often, like I say, students will start thinking they're going to finish the whole masters, and then as you said, you did apply thinking, oh, just give it a chance, the clinical doctorate, I'll try it, and then they get place, awarded a place, and so then they take the lesser award, but they always say, yeah, that first module in research methods really does help with that interview, where you have to do tests and you have to talk about, research and how, what kind of things are of interest and how you would go about carrying out research. It is designed that way. That's the course is designed so that it will help with those kind of things. And obviously, like you said, it's not just about clinical psychology here. It's about, and it can help with any area of work that you're going in, any career, if you want to be leading things, and especially in sort of an applied kind of setting where things might really help to do action research. You might not need a formal kind of research project, but you can do action research, which is research as you go through in a real setting, and that can really help to give you evidence of making a change that is required in any work, actually.
Thank you. Obviously, one of the main drawbacks for any masters is that it might mean that you have to, do less work, or paid work, or, in traditionally taught masters, you might not be able to do any work around it, or you might choose not to, so you can really focus on your masters. And of course, there are financial implications to master's study, in that you have to pay tuition fees as well. So it's not, this stuff doesn't come for free, and that can be really tricky when we're trying to think about inclusion and diversity in our workforce as well. Are there any other subsidised or bursary ways for accessing master's funding, or scholarships, anything like that these days?
I think some universities do offer some. It's a case of looking at what universities have on offer, because obviously most students are looking to go through student finance, and not all masters cost the same amount of money, which isn't the same as undergraduates. Most undergraduates cost £9,500 a year for studying. And I think it's individual. You could also be really lucky and get a company to sponsor you. And sometimes people in the work situation do actually manage to get support from their employer and get the tuition fees paid. But yeah, it is a problem. And like you say, you have to have work experience. The work experience isn't well paid, and trying to then balance that with your very demanding masters is quite a sort of a balancing act, and quite a skill that you need to develop, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, not one that I considered of, but you could potentially ask your employer to help with that. But certainly, even if you're doing distance learning like I was, it can be really helpful if your employer is on board with giving you a little bit of study leave here and then, or allowing you to work on assignments, in quieter moments, because it is really tricky. When I was with you, I'd had a car crash, I had a breakup, I was trying to strive for new assistant posts, and it's not an easy time in my life, whilst also trying to learn this stuff and get it in my head and be functional in my paid work as well. We are asking a lot of our aspiring psychologists, aren't we?
Yes, we really are. It is. Most, I suppose, students are coming to us at a time, usually in their 20s, when there's a lot of change and there's a lot to get to grips with, and you're still developing as a person. So it is a very demanding time, and yet there's a lot to be balancing and juggling. But it's amazing how it can be pulled off. I think if you're determined and you're very well motivated, you can pull it off and you can succeed. But it is a lot to deal with, especially when you've got the finance issues as well. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think I was just operating on grim and gritty determination, really, at times during that tricky patch in my life. But it's not. I think it's important that we think about how we balance and reduce the risk of burnout. Is there any guidance you'd give to master's students or potential master's students, or even people that aren't considering masters, for how to reduce and avoid burnout in mental health professions?
Yes, definitely. We cover that quite a lot on one of the second year modules, actually, that I run. It's a really important topic, and it's, there's lots of sort of work looking into how, as a profession, when in any type of therapy, it's a very giving profession. It takes a lot out of you. It can be quite exhausting, and yet we sort of recommend all these things to clients, and yet don't take the time to do it to us and give ourselves that room. And it can, because it's so competitive, you often find that it's breeding more competition in the workplace. So who gets in first? Who's got the heaviest workload? Who's got the most clients? And it's not very healthy. And so we really encourage people to reflect. And reflection is a massive part of being a psychologist. You should be able to sort of spend time and just reflect on what's happening. How do you feel? How can you make things a bit better? And trying to recognize any signs of stress before it builds up, because stress can build up and come upon you quite slowly, and it's not until you're sort of dysfunctional that you realize how much it has affected you. So really encouraging time for self-care and finding things that help with self-care, and making sure you fit it in, and pushing work back, not taking on more, and trying not to get it sort of be pulled into that very competitive element of being a psychologist.
It is tricky, isn't it? I remember when I was working as an assistant psychologist, and you're asked to do stuff, and there is that expectation that you will just do it, but you've already got so many other things. I was working on 3 inpatient wards for my for my assistant work. It's a big job, and I loved it, but there is that kind of, it's a tricky relationship where you feel like you want to say yes, and you kind of have to say yes, but you don't really have enough hours in the day.
Yes, absolutely. So obviously it's often sold to those in lower paid jobs as it's good experience for you. Why would you say no? And yes, it is good experience, but you should be allocated the right time sort of frames to fit these in within the workload that allows you to feel that you're giving it everything, rather than being spread so thinly you aren't able to fully be present with anything. So I'd say it's about being boundaried. You have to, however much you're grateful for being in the role, and that's often a feeling which students sort of relay to me. They're grateful for having the role, but they wouldn't be getting that role if they weren't deserving of it. So it's about appreciating your value, and putting any boundaries in place, and showing and saying that you want the experience. You're very grateful for the experience, but you need to be realistic about what you can actually do.
Yeah, and that is likely to be a question on your applications as well. When have you been able to say no to stuff?
Yeah.
So it's good practice to try and put that in, to try and give that a bash as well. It's very important that we're able to know our own limits and be confidently able to protect them. Otherwise, we will be too thinly spread, and it will lead to burnout. It will lead to long periods of sickness, absence, and it might well lead to us wanting to leave the profession altogether. And that's just not what anyone wants for us.
No, that's exactly right. So, we see all the time where burnout is sort of leading to more and more absences and people leaving the profession. And they say that actually, young people coming into the profession are more at risk of burnout. And that's because they're trying so hard and and you don't get that experience. Of course, it's better for you to build up experience and then you're bringing more to the job. But if you're leaving before you get to that point, that's really sad and it's detrimental for the profession. So yeah, I think it is it's very important to take what you can and try to be boundaried. And like you said, it will pay. You will be asked about that, and it is something to be proud of, that you had that ability to say no.
Yeah, I tried to use this podcast to spread a little bit of compassion in the psychology world as well, and just to really highlight that this isn't a race. I often say it doesn't really matter, whether you get onto training this year or next year or the year after. It might matter personally, it might matter if you feel like you're putting your life on hold. But in terms of the finished product, what is actually better is that you get there on day one of your course and things feel within your comfort zone or just ever so slightly a little bit of a stretch. What we don't want is for people on, day one, year one of training to be massively floundering and feeling like it's all too much. They can't do the personal, can't do the professional bit, can't do the research bit, because it is, that and mixing socially with the cohort and juggling your life. It is a lot, isn't it, when you're undergoing any professional psychology training? And so some of the advantage of just slowing things down a bit and really making sure you're consolidating these skills, you're giving yourself opportunities to learn research, to do research, means that when you get to your chosen professional qualification route in psychology, it will feel like it's in your stride, and that is so much better.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I hear that quite a lot. Students feel really disheartened because they can do the course over 4 years. So obviously, some of them, bless, are applying year after year, and they're so disheartened. And often I hear, I feel like my life's on hold and I just want to get this. But like I say, it's about trying to reframe it in your mind slightly and think about, well, each year I'm more experienced. I'm going to be bringing more to it. I'm going to be able to be more comfortable in it and be able to enjoy it. And it seems like a bizarre thing to say, but actually, if you can enjoy it, it will be so much more pleasurable as an experience, and you're less likely to feel really overwhelmed. So yes, it's about sort of accepting your capabilities at the time, and then knowing that however hard you sort of want, however much you want it, it's okay. You will get there eventually, probably, or you'll get to somewhere and you'll be happy. Things often work out for the best, and yeah, I think it's a slow build up is probably more beneficial than going in feeling way over your head and then sort of feeling a bit panicky and not comfortable. Like I say, you want to have a little bit of a challenge, but it's got to be a comfortable sort of push, not being massively overwhelmed.
Yeah, I guess I kind of liken it to when I did my my maths GCSE, and in year 10 I did an exam, and I just found it quite tricky, and so I really spent time looking at what I'd found tricky about that, and I asked my maths teacher for some additional help at lunchtimes, once a week, because I was that kind of girl, and really by the time my GCSE final exam came, I walked out of that exam because I'd looked at every question, went, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. I walked out feeling like I'd absolutely given it my best shot. And that's kind of how it felt when I was doing my doctorate interviews, is that they asked me questions, and even if they were a bit left field, I still felt like I could give a good answer. And I think that's the difference. That's what time and consolidation and kind of focused attention can be really useful for.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's it. It's like that's the sort of epitome of it, isn't it? You sort of building up that experience, and the more you experience you have in all aspects of your life, the more you're bringing to that interview or job role, and that's going to be beneficial not just for you and how you perform as a professional in that role, but also to any clients that you have. You're going to be able to bring more to it because you are sort of have a much wider sort of experience and more to bring to it. So yeah, I think that's exactly right. It is about just being aware that it's all experiences are good. They say, don't they, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, which is a bit of a, maybe a little bit controversial, but it does mean that you have more to offer, and that can be really good for clients.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to be suggesting that.
No, sorry.
Sorry. No, I absolutely know what you mean. It's being able to reframe the negative experiences as well, and to take things from it, isn't it? So yeah, there is that. I think when I was studying my doctorate, even there was teachings that we'd had about people that had been scarred as part of their experiences, and it's that sense of you only get a scar if you've survived. And that's really powerful as an idea. So it is basically that if it doesn't kill you, then, that's a good thing. But it's how you then speak about that, isn't it? And even within difficult interviews, challenging interviews, they will often want to know how you've coped in adversity and how you've gone through that. And we need to be well practiced in doing that, and also demonstrating that it's okay to have had adversity. We want well-rounded people in psychology. We definitely don't want machines.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah. So it is about, well, it comes back to reflection, doesn't it? And I was saying the importance of reflection earlier. It is a key sort of function within a profession, a psychology professional. And it's about thinking about what that event meant to you, that adversity that you've experienced, and we all have. And it's, like we say, it's an important thing to survive an adversity and to come out of it and think about what that means, what it means, and how do you take it forward, and what can you do with it in a positive light. And yeah, that will obviously benefit clients because you can relate to things and you can talk about experiences more, and just that more to offer, really.
Definitely. Are masters generally still kind of roll off in September, or can you kind of roll on at different points of the academic year? I'm thinking, if people are listening to this now, they're thinking, is now the time? Do I apply now, or when is the best time or the only time to apply for master's study?
I think now universities are trying to get this sort of much more flexible approach to applying and starting, but in my own experience, I'm not aware of any that are currently actually starting other than in September. We start only in September, and applications are for masters, they're not the same as for undergraduates. In undergraduates you're applying the year before, really. But for masters, you can still be applying in July and be expecting to start in September. So you can have a good long think about it. Also, I would just say that it's probably worth putting in an application anyway. Just put in an application, and you can think about whether or not you do want to start. Often you can defer your start. But yeah, I think because of the way masters are structured with modules taught in a certain order at a certain time, that it's not always as flexible as being able to start at different times. maybe that's next for the sort of novel. Yes.
Roll on, roll off, masters, here when you're ready. And what's the deal with actual applications? Is that like a form? Is it an interview? What tends to be the application route?
Well, different universities do different things. For us, it's just a form. We just have a form. It's not that much. And I would say, actually, when you're writing your personal statement, we don't always want to read that this is all you've ever wanted to do. And so it's nice when people are just open and honest and say, that they're hardworking and well motivated, and that's enough. We don't need pages and pages of that you've always wanted to do it and demonstrating how this is the case. It's enough to just say that you really want to do this now and you're really well motivated.
Oh, you just made me flash back to my undergraduate personal statement, and honestly, I found a copy of it not so long ago. It was dreadful. It was like talking about stuff like, oh, me and my brother get on quite well. Like, why was that in there? Who was not helping me? How did I get on to a course? I'm now much better at writing personal statements, but honestly, so yeah, it's very interesting to think about what should and should not be in your personal statement these days.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it is funny sometimes reading them, and I think most people will look back and sort of think, oh, but no, yeah, I think sometimes the sort of couple of sentence, well, a paragraph and a half maybe says more than enough, and yes, it's about making it directly relevant, which is all of that's a key to all academic writing, really.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining me, Mel. Is there anything that I haven't asked you or that you wanted to talk about that we haven't done so far?
Not really, no. Just we're talking about sort of inclusivity and diversity, and just how that's really important to make that much better within psychology generally. That's a really important point, and hopefully the barriers are coming down and we're making it better. But that's just something to just acknowledge. I think it's important that we all acknowledge that.
Definitely.
That's all.
We've got more coming up in the podcast about inclusion and diversity and equality as well. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been so lovely connecting with you, and just wishing you a lovely summer. And let me know if I can help with anything in future.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much to our guest, Dr. Mel West. I have found it really, really interesting, and like I said at the beginning, if you'd like to talk to the other side of this debate, if you think there are other ways to strengthen your CV without needing to do a master's, then do let me know, and we can also talk about that. If you've got any other ideas for podcast episode content, do let me know. And we also, as a little sneak scoop, we've got an exclusive episode coming where I answer any questions for you. It's going to be an Ask Marianne Anything special. So if you have got any questions and you'd like to record yourself asking me them, then do let me know. And there's details for how you can record testimonials or questions in the show notes. You can listen to all back episodes of the podcast by checking them out on Spotify, on Amazon, on Apple Podcasts, and you can also listen to all of them on YouTube as well. And basically, I believe anywhere you could envisage or dream of accessing podcasts, you can reach us as well, which includes Google and Deezer. I think there's one called Deezer. Yes, you can reach me there too. We've had a lovely, successful spring and summer in the Aspiring Psychologist membership. Lots of people within the membership have this year gained places onto clinical psychology courses, and they said that they found that the membership had really helped to support them and to help them perform optimally in the interviews. We've had a couple of people who wish to carry on in the membership as well, even though they are going to be trainee clinical psychologists. So that is just the most wonderful feedback. If you would like to rub shoulders, not only with myself, but with other aspiring psychologists and also other trainee clinical psychologists, or maybe if you are a trainee psychologist and you would welcome some more support, some more compassionate guidance, and some more thinking about enhancing, developing your personal, professional and research skills, then do get yourself onto the Aspiring Psychologist waiting list. And we've got some exciting developments coming for you to be able to practice and improve your skills and your chances of being published as well in research within the membership. But you've got to be on the waiting list for when the space is next open on the 1st of July. So details of how to do that can be accessed via my Linktree, which is available from all of my socials. Do come and connect with me on my socials. Basically, I'm Dr Marianne Trent on pretty much everywhere. So I'm that on Twitter, I'm that on LinkedIn. I keep getting LinkedIn and Linktree mixed up. I'm that on Instagram. I'm Marianne Trent on Facebook, and also Good Thinking Psychological Services Facebook and YouTube. Good Thinking Psychological Services. So honestly, if you haven't yet stumbled across me on social media, I'm also on TikTok for Dr Marianne Trent too, then I don't know how you've done it, you know. You must live in a social media vacuum, which is probably very good for your mental health. So long may that last. But yeah, we do some lovely stuff in the membership. And of course, there's the upcoming Aspiring Psychologist Collective book. If you know someone who is currently training on the special Hull York scheme that takes you from undergraduate to the doctorate in clinical psychology, I'd love to be able to include a story from someone in that position within the upcoming Aspiring Psychologist membership. So if you know someone who fulfills that brief, then do let them know about me. And similarly, if you know someone, or perhaps you are someone who has trained initially, you'd perhaps done your undergraduate, maybe done your master's in a different country, and then come across to the UK to pursue your professional qualification. Perhaps you've even got on to a professional qualifying course, but English wasn't your first language, or you weren't born in the UK. I'd love to be able to include a couple of stories from your perspective within the Aspiring Psychologist book too, which is hopefully going to be published at the start of October. Thank you so much for listening right to the end. Let me know if you've got any questions, or if you'd like to record your question for me for the special Q&A episode. I'm going to drop in the Q&A jingle here. Just, because I've got it, it's ready, I'm excited. I love a jingle. Thank you so much for being part of my world, and take care of yourselves. Be kind to you.
Questions and answers with Dr. Marianne Trent. Use the details in the show notes to ask her anything. Questions and answers. Questions and answers. Questions and answers with Dr. Marianne Trent. If you're looking to become a psychologist, then let this be your guide. This podcast at your side, you'll be on your way to being qualified. It's the Aspiring Psychologist